There is a question that sits at the center of some of the most painful experiences people bring into therapy, and into the quiet of their own minds late at night when no one else is around to hear it. Why can't I just leave? Or, if they've already left, why do I still want to go back? Why do I still love this person who hurt me? Why does part of me miss someone I know was bad for me? Why does the grief of this feel bigger than the relief? These questions carry so much shame. The person asking them usually has a theory about themselves, that they're weak, that they're stupid, that something is fundamentally wrong with them, that any reasonable person would have been long gone by now. They have probably heard these theories reflected back to them by people who love them and do not understand. Why are you still talking about this person? Why do you keep going back? What is wrong with you? And the answer, the real answer, the one that changes everything when people actually hear it, is that there is nothing wrong with them. There is something happening to them. Something neurobiological, something deeply human, something that follows a specific and understandable logic once you know what to look for. It's called trauma bonding. And it is one of the most important psychological concepts to understand if you have ever been in a harmful relationship, if you are supporting someone who has, or if you are a clinician working with clients who are trying to make sense of why leaving felt, or still feels, impossible. Today we're going all the way in. What trauma bonding actually is and what it isn't. The neuroscience of why the brain gets hooked. The specific conditions that create a trauma bond. And, crucially, something that doesn't get talked about enough, how trauma bonds are sometimes deliberately engineered by people who know exactly what they're doing. How to recognize the warning signs. And what the path out actually requires. There's a resource linked in the description to support this work, for personal use and for clinical use. Let's start with the definition. Section 1. What trauma bonding actually is. The term trauma bonding was coined by researcher and therapist Patrick Carnes in his 1997 book The Betrayal Bond. Carnes was studying the experiences of people who remained in, or kept returning to, relationships that were causing them serious harm. Abusive partnerships, relationships with addicted family members, exploitative professional relationships, high-control religious groups. And what he observed across all of these contexts was the same paradox: the presence of harm was not breaking the attachment. In many cases, it was deepening it. He called this the betrayal bond, the powerful, counterintuitive attachment that forms specifically in relationships characterized by the combination of intimacy and harm. The closer the relationship and the more intermittent the harm, the stronger the bond that forms. This was not a theory about weakness or poor judgment. It was a theory about the specific conditions under which the human attachment system gets hijacked. Trauma bonding is now understood clinically as a psychological and neurobiological response to a relationship in which cycles of abuse, harm, or control are interspersed with periods of affection, relief, or reward, and in which the harmful person holds significant power over the target's sense of safety, belonging, or self-worth. It is the attachment that forms not despite the harm but, in a very specific neurobiological sense, partly because of it. This is the part that is most difficult for people outside the experience to understand, and most validating for people inside it. The bond in a trauma-bonded relationship is often experienced as more intense, more consuming, more urgent than attachments formed in healthy relationships. This is not because the relationship is genuinely more meaningful. It is because of what intermittent reinforcement, threat, and relief do to the brain's reward and attachment systems, which brings us to the neuroscience. What trauma bonding is not, it is not love in the healthy sense, though it is often experienced as love and often involves genuine love as one of its components. It is not a sign that the relationship is worth salvaging. It is not evidence that the harmful person actually cares for the target at the deepest level. And it is absolutely not a character flaw in the person experiencing it. It is a predictable neurological response to a specific set of conditions. Section 2. The neuroscience, why the brain gets hooked. To understand why trauma bonds are so powerful and so difficult to break, you need to understand three interlocking neurobiological mechanisms: the dopaminergic reward system, the role of cortisol and threat response, and the attachment system's response to intermittent reinforcement. The dopamine system first. Dopamine is the brain's primary reward and motivation neurotransmitter. It is released not just in response to reward, but in anticipation of reward, and most powerfully in response to unpredictable reward. This is the neurological basis of intermittent reinforcement, and it is why slot machines are more addictive than vending machines. The vending machine always delivers. The slot machine sometimes delivers, unpredictably. The brain's dopaminergic system responds to the slot machine with far more activation, because the unpredictability creates an anticipatory craving that consistent reward never does. In a relationship that cycles between harm and affection, the moments of warmth, tenderness, or relief, the return of the loving partner after a period of cruelty or withdrawal, function neurologically like the slot machine's payout. The brain has been in a state of heightened vigilance and craving during the harmful period, and the release of that tension when the good period returns floods the reward system with dopamine. The high is genuine. The relief is genuine. And the nervous system begins to organize itself around the anticipation of that relief in ways that are structurally similar to addiction. Cortisol plays a parallel and equally important role. In a harmful relationship, the baseline level of threat, even in the calm periods, the waiting for the other shoe to drop, keeps the stress response activated at a low but chronic level. Cortisol is flooding the system. The amygdala is on high alert. And when the threat is withdrawn, when the harmful person becomes kind again, when the conflict resolves, when the love bombing returns, the drop in cortisol creates a profound physical sense of relief and safety that the brain associates with the presence of that specific person. The person who caused the threat becomes the person who relieves it. The brain cannot easily distinguish between the source of danger and the source of safety when they are the same individual. And then the attachment system. The human attachment system, particularly in people with anxious or disorganized attachment histories, responds to perceived threat of abandonment or rejection by intensifying the drive to seek closeness with the attachment figure. This is why conflict and the threat of loss in a harmful relationship often increases rather than decreases the urgency of the bond. The attachment system is doing exactly what it is designed to do, pulling toward the attachment figure under threat. It has simply been installed in a context where that pull is towards someone who is causing the harm. These three systems together, dopamine, cortisol, and attachment, create a neurobiological hook that is genuinely difficult to disengage from through willpower alone. This is why telling someone to just leave a trauma-bonded relationship is as inadequate as telling someone to just stop being addicted. The solution has to work at the level of the nervous system, not just the level of rational decision-making. Section 3. The 6 conditions that create a trauma bond. Trauma bonds do not form in all harmful relationships, they form under specific conditions. Patrick Carnes and subsequent researchers have identified the relational conditions that most reliably produce a trauma bond. Understanding these conditions is important both for recognizing whether you are in one and for recognizing when someone may be attempting to engineer one with you. The first condition is a significant power imbalance. Trauma bonds form most readily in relationships where one person holds disproportionate power over the other's sense of safety, belonging, financial stability, social standing, or self-concept. The greater the dependency, real or manufactured, the more leverage the harmful person has and the more difficult it is for the target to orient away from them. The second condition is intermittent reinforcement, the cycling between harm and reward that we discussed in the neuroscience section. Consistency, paradoxically, does not produce strong bonds. The alternation of punishment and reward, coldness and warmth, cruelty and tenderness is what creates the powerful, dysregulating attachment that characterizes trauma bonding. The unpredictability keeps the target in a state of hypervigilance and craving that constant abuse, as terrible as that is, does not produce in the same way. The third condition is isolation. Trauma bonds deepen significantly when the target is cut off from alternative sources of support, perspective, and validation. This isolation can be physical, preventing contact with friends and family, or it can be more subtle, creating conflict between the target and their support network, consistently portraying the target's other relationships as threatening or inferior, engineering a situation in which the harmful person becomes the target's primary or sole emotional resource. Isolation removes the external mirrors that might otherwise help the target see the relationship more clearly. The fourth condition is the threat to survival, real or perceived. This does not have to be a physical threat. It can be the perceived threat of emotional annihilation, abandonment, rejection, loss of the relationship that has become the organizing center of the target's identity. When the nervous system registers a relationship as necessary for survival, as it is biologically designed to do in infancy, and as it can be manipulated to do in adulthood, the attachment system responds with the full intensity of a survival drive. The fifth condition is the presence of genuine positive experiences within the harmful relationship. This is what makes trauma bonds so different from simply being in a relationship with someone who is consistently cruel. The harmful person is not always harmful. There are real moments of connection, genuine laughter, periods of real tenderness. The target is not delusional for remembering these moments as real, they were real. And it is precisely this genuine positive experience, woven through the harm, that makes the grief of leaving so complicated and the pull back toward the relationship so persistent. The sixth condition is a shame-based self-concept in the target, either pre-existing or manufactured over the course of the relationship. A person who already carries significant shame and self-doubt is more vulnerable to the dynamics of trauma bonding, because the harmful person's narrative about them, "You are too much, you are lucky I stay, no one else would want you," lands on soil that is already prepared to receive it. And the relationship itself, through chronic criticism, gaslighting, and devaluation, often deepens whatever shame was already present, making the target progressively less able to trust their own perception of reality and less able to imagine that they deserve better. Section 4. How trauma bonds are deliberately engineered. This section is the one that doesn't get talked about enough, and it needs to be talked about, clearly and directly, because one of the most important things a person can do to protect themselves is to understand not just how trauma bonds form organically, but how they are sometimes created on purpose. Not everyone who creates a trauma bond does so consciously or with calculated intent. Some of the dynamics we've discussed emerge from personality structures, attachment wounds, and behavioral patterns that the harmful person is not fully aware of. But some people do know exactly what they are doing. And the toolkit they use is specific enough to be named. The deliberate engineering of a trauma bond typically begins with love bombing, an overwhelming, accelerated campaign of attention, affection, admiration, and intimacy in the early stages of a relationship. The love bomber doesn't just like you. They need you. They've never felt this way. You are extraordinary. You are the person they've been waiting for. The intensity is intoxicating, and it is designed to be. It creates a powerful dopaminergic attachment before the target has had enough time or information to evaluate the relationship clearly. By the time the first harm occurs, the bond is already formed, and the target's nervous system has already catalogued this person as the source of the most significant positive feeling it has experienced in recent memory. Following the love bombing, the deliberate engineer of a trauma bond will introduce the first devaluation, often subtly, and often in a way that is deniable. A comment framed as a joke. A moment of coldness that is quickly explained away. A criticism delivered with apparent concern. The target, flooded with cognitive dissonance, "This person adored me. Why are they behaving this way?" works to make sense of the shift. They look inward. They wonder what they did wrong. They try harder. And in trying harder, they begin the process of organizing themselves around the regulation of the harmful person's emotional state, which is exactly what the harmful person needs. The isolation is then engineered, often gradually and with apparent reasonableness. Your friends don't really understand you the way I do. Your family is too involved in your life. I just want you to myself. Is that so wrong? The target's other relationships are subtly or overtly undermined until the harmful person occupies the position of primary attachment figure with little competition for that role. Gaslighting is the tool that seals the bond, the systematic undermining of the target's ability to trust their own perception of reality. What you experienced didn't happen that way. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things. You always do this. A person whose reality is consistently denied by their primary attachment figure eventually loses confidence in their own internal compass. And a person who cannot trust their own perceptions cannot make a clear-eyed assessment of the relationship they're in. The warning signs that someone may be attempting to engineer a trauma bond with you are, in short, these: a pace of intimacy that feels too fast and too intense for the actual time you've known each other. A narrative of destiny or uniqueness that sets this relationship apart from all others before you've had time to truly know each other. Subtle criticisms or moments of coldness that appear and are then quickly repaired, the cycle beginning before you've recognized it as a cycle. Pressure to reduce contact with your existing support network. And a pattern in which your sense of self begins to shrink, in which you find yourself walking on eggshells, editing yourself, apologizing more than feels proportionate, and spending increasing amounts of mental energy managing this person's emotional state. These are not proof. They are signals. And they deserve to be taken seriously. Section 5. Recognizing a trauma bond from the inside. One of the most disorienting aspects of being in a trauma bond is that it rarely feels like what it is from the inside. It feels like love, the most intense love, possibly, that the person has ever experienced. It feels like the relationship is uniquely challenging because it is uniquely meaningful. It feels like leaving would be a profound loss of something irreplaceable. From the inside, a trauma bond often feels like an inability to stop thinking about the person even when you want to, a physical longing for their presence that doesn't diminish even after harm, a compulsive return to the relationship after leaving multiple times, a tendency to minimize or explain away harmful behavior that you would not accept if it were happening to someone you loved, an experience of the relationship as the primary organizing center of your identity and daily life, and a deep, persistent belief that if you just loved better, tried harder, communicated more clearly, or became more of what they need, the relationship would transform into the one it was in the beginning. The last one is particularly important. The hope of return, the belief that the loving, attentive, idealizing person from the early relationship is the real person, and that the harmful behavior is the aberration, is one of the most powerful forces maintaining the bond. And it is not entirely irrational, because that person from the beginning was real. The problem is that they were not the whole picture. They were one phase of a cycle. From the outside, a trauma bond often looks like a pattern of leaving and returning that baffles the people watching. A progressive narrowing of the person's world as the relationship expands to fill more and more of it. A defensive posture toward any perspective that is critical of the harmful person. A grief response to the relationship, even during periods of safety away from it, that looks disproportionate to outside observers. And an exhaustion, a deep, bone-level exhaustion, that comes from the chronic physiological activation of living inside a cycle of threat and relief. For therapists, the client in a trauma bond often arrives not asking to leave the relationship. They arrive asking you to help them figure out how to make it work. This is clinically important. Meeting that request with a direct challenge to the relationship is often counterproductive. The protective response toward the attachment figure is powerful, and meeting it with confrontation typically strengthens it. What tends to be more effective is slowing down, building the therapeutic alliance, and working to expand the client's window of tolerance for their own ambivalence, helping them make contact with parts of their experience that the bond has required them to suppress. Section 6. Trauma bonding versus healthy attachment. Because trauma bonds are experienced as intense and consuming, it's important to distinguish them from the intensity of healthy attachment, both to help survivors understand what they've been in, and to help them know what they're moving toward. Healthy attachment is characterized by security, a baseline sense that the other person is reliably available, consistently non-threatening, and genuinely interested in your well-being. In a securely attached relationship, you do not have to earn the other person's care through performance or compliance. You do not have to monitor their mood to determine how safe it is to be yourself. You can have needs without fearing that the needs will be weaponized against you. You can disagree without it threatening the fundamental fabric of the relationship. Healthy love can be intense. It is not always calm. But the intensity in a healthy relationship is not driven by threat and relief cycles. It is not maintained by intermittent reinforcement. It does not require you to progressively abandon your sense of self in order to preserve the connection. And it does not leave you more depleted, more confused, and less yourself than you were before the relationship began. Trauma bonds feel like intensity because they are intense, neurologically, physiologically, psychologically. But the intensity is the intensity of a nervous system in chronic dysregulation, not the intensity of genuine love and connection. This distinction is not always easy to feel from the inside. But it is one of the most important things a person healing from a trauma bond can eventually come to know. What they experienced was real, and it was not the truest or deepest thing that is available to them. The journey toward secure attachment, understanding one's own attachment patterns, how they were activated and exploited in the trauma-bonded relationship, and what healthy connection actually looks and feels like, is the longer arc of recovery. And it is possible. Attachment is not fixed. The nervous system is plastic. With time, support, and the right relational experiences, the system can learn what safety actually feels like. Section 7. Breaking the bond. What recovery actually requires. Breaking a trauma bond is not accomplished by understanding alone, though understanding is genuinely the essential first step. The bond lives in the body and in the nervous system, not only in the cognitive narrative, and recovery has to address all of those levels. The first requirement is physical and digital distance from the person. This is not optional, and it is not about punishment or drama. It is about neurological recalibration. Every contact, including passive observation of their social media, reactivates the dopaminergic craving and resets the nervous system's recalibration process. The brain cannot begin to update its model of the attachment while it is still receiving input from the attachment figure. Distance is not the end of the work. It is the condition under which the work becomes possible. The second requirement is somatic and nervous system work. Because the bond is held physiologically, recovery requires interventions that address the body directly, not just the thoughts. This means working with the chronic activation patterns that the relationship installed, the hypervigilance, the startle response, the baseline anxiety, the places in the body where the threat is still held. Somatic techniques, grounding practices, and nervous system regulation tools are not supplementary to trauma bond recovery. They are central to it. The third requirement is grief work. Leaving a trauma-bonded relationship involves multiple simultaneous losses: the loss of the person, the loss of the relationship as it was in its best moments, the loss of the future that was imagined inside the relationship, and the loss of the self-concept that was organized around the relationship. These losses are real, and they deserve to be grieved, fully, non-linearly, without a timeline imposed on them from outside. Grief that is rushed or suppressed does not resolve. It surfaces later, often in the next relationship. The fourth requirement is identity reconstruction, the slow, sustained work of answering the question, who am I outside of this relationship and outside of this bond? What do I value? What do I want? What do I actually feel when I'm not spending all of my cognitive and emotional bandwidth managing someone else's reality? This work often surfaces material from earlier in life, earlier attachments, earlier experiences of being in relationship with people who held disproportionate power. And that earlier material, when it surfaces, is not a detour from the work. It is the work. And the fifth requirement, possibly the most important, is a corrective relational experience. The attachment system heals in relationship. This can be a therapeutic relationship, a deep friendship, a community, a peer support group, any context in which the person experiences, consistently and over time, what it feels like to be in relationship with someone who is reliably safe. The nervous system learns safety the same way it learned threat, through repeated experience. And with enough repeated experience of genuine safety, it begins, gradually, to reorganize. The resource linked in the description supports this recovery process, as a personal tool and as a clinical one. It's there when you're ready. If you have been in a trauma bond, or if you are in one right now, I want to say something directly to you. The fact that you couldn't just leave is not evidence of your weakness. It is evidence of how powerful these dynamics are. Evidence that your nervous system was doing exactly what nervous systems do under the specific conditions that were present. Evidence that you are human, and that humans are built to attach, even when the attachment hurts. Understanding that is not the same as accepting that the relationship was okay. It's not. Understanding is not forgiveness of the person who harmed you. It is something for you, a release of the shame that has told you this was your fault, your failure, your deficiency. It wasn't. And you can heal from it. Not quickly, not linearly, not without support, but genuinely, substantively, in ways that change not just this relationship, but how you move through every relationship that comes after. The trauma bonding resource is linked in the description, for your own healing, and for the therapists and coaches who want to bring this framework into their work with clients. If this video helped you name something you've been living inside without a word for it, share it with someone else who needs that name. And I'll see you in the next one.